Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with More Insights and Strategy. It is Monday morning, and we are back for a Hot Desk podcast. I am with Melody Brew, VP Chief Analyst for Modern Workspace, and basically all things employer. How did you describe that, Mel? I loved it.
People tech.
People tech. I love that. I love that. And there's definitely a lot of services we provide, and simplification is one of those. So, if this is the first time you're coming in, we talk about we talk about people tools. I might just change that. Kind of the next new normal in modern work, tools, trends, trajectories. So, Mel, it's great to see you. Tell me, we have. I want to apologize to the audience for not being as consistent as we should be, but can you talk a little bit about your travel schedule?
Yeah, well, this is the first time we've done this on a Monday, so I feel like I'm probably going to think it's Friday when we're done, since it's usually a Friday thing. But this month, the month of October was crazy. I think I was in 5 states, 7 cities, and 2 countries, all in the month of October, but maybe a little bit at the end of September, starting with Microsoft in New York. So the travel was just nonstop. So we're going to talk about a few of the places that I was, where I was, and there's been a lot. I feel like I kind of was taking a page from your book, and I was in not just at several events, but sometimes at 2 events at once. I was literally doing one of the SAP virtual events from my hotel room right before I went downstairs into a WebexOne keynote. So I say I learn from the best, Pat. So I'm just
Aw, I
taking it,
appreciate that. I gotta tell you that
taking
you took it one step further on that Middle Eastern trip. But hey, let's dive in here. We got a good show for you. We're talking about Adobe, Box, Avaya, Cisco, and also a hot or not, no additional cost features. But Mel, let's jump in on Adobe Max. You were busy, a lot of new content coming in, a lot of AI, and you even shot a couple of videos, I think, too.
Yeah, one video there. Yeah. So I think the two big takeaways for me were from Adobe Max. By the way, Adobe Max it was my first time there. It was incredible. Just the creativity, and the other part of it was all of the demos were live. And with AI, we've seen so many things lately that they're just the canned demos. And I understand why companies do that, because things can go wrong. And we saw what happened with Google when stuff went wrong. But they did it live, and they did have a couple of little things where things they had to restart and whatever. But it was really nice to see the tools actually working. But I think overall, there were two kind of main themes, at least for me, that I captured. One is that they're just really addressing this massive content demand explosion, and that's with their Gen Studio solution. And then the other thing, which I think is really cool, is that they're allowing for more creative control. And this is across the board. This isn't just with Gen Studio, which does allow for a lot of creative control, like with Adobe Express. It allows for a lot of collaboration between creators and marketers, but with their generative AI tools. So I know you've played around with Firefly as well. So with the text to image generation, you put in your prompt and you get the image. Well, now with Firefly 2, there's so much more control within the generator that it's no longer something that non-creatives would want to use. It's like you can adjust aperture, you can adjust things like as if you're actually using a camera,
Yeah.
using more, it's more Photoshop-like. So I think that where I say like real creatives versus sort of citizen creatives are going to be more apt to want to use it, because it's not just a tool doing it for them. It's really, they're putting so much more into the creative process. And I think this is smart for so many reasons, because, if you look at with generative AI, there's this big question about copyright. And also Adobe's made, big strides in making sure that everything is safe for commercial use. And the ability to be able to copyright something, it has to have like some real like human interaction, some creative input. So I think that's a big step in allowing that to when you have that much input into the process. But then also, if you just want to say, make me a dragon with, purple hair and whatever, it'll make that for you too. But if you want it to be, more of a starting point, which then you can layer graphics over it and you can adjust the aperture and you can do all of these things that, I don't know how to use these tools, but
Oh,
creatives.
wait a second. I would expect all of your experience you would have, but then again, maybe there's other people who can do it better.
Well, so that's what, it's funny that at first the messaging of creatives versus marketers, as a former CMO, I'm like, well, but marketers are creative, but there is a line between marketers and like the true creatives, the ones who
Yes.
are like sitting at their desk creating art. And especially as a CMO of a startup, you kind of have to do everything, So I had to have some basic understanding of Photoshop and all of these other tools to be able to do things when the staff was sort of slim. But the real creatives, the ones who create all these beautiful, literally pieces of art, but they have now with Adobe Express you can collaborate between those, and that's the other place where control comes into this, is that now with something like Adobe Express, which is sort of like, I think, the kind of the light version where you can go into Photoshop, the marketers can, or the creatives can, lock down the assets. So they can say, here's the brand approved assets, don't mess with this. But then marketers in the field who may need to adjust for something based on, some whatever channel they're in or what country or whatever campaign they're working on, they can make these adjustments without messing with the content. And all of this content can now live within Gen Studio. So there's this end-to-end solution, which is Gen Studio, which is basically from ideation to measurement at the end of a campaign, that manages this whole life cycle of what they call the content supply chain. So there was so much like to take in there. Really just incredible. I mean, I'm not kidding you. At the closing keynote, there were people crying. Like that's
Wow.
I've never seen that at a tech conference before. But, people just talking about their creative process and how it's changed their lives, and, this sort of creator economy, and how people have been able to really do the things that they love, and these tools that allow them to change just their whole, like their life plan, and literally people in tears over it. I mean, it was really incredible.
Yeah. Wow. We spent 7 minutes on Adobe Max.
Yeah,
If we do that, we're not making through this show
we
without
gotta.
an hour and a half. But listen, I think my overall view of Adobe is that I'm impressed that they didn't let the startups come in and wipe out their business. Um, they jumped on generative AI so quickly. I mean, a lot quicker than I would have expected, indicating to me that they had worked on it for a very long time. And here we are. And I saw the Gen 2 Firefly, and it was pretty darn impressive,
Yeah.
coincided with kind of Dolly 3 and all these different things. But I think Adobe is going to be positioned very well if they keep the innovation going and keep the investment going. Let's
Mhm.
move to our next topic here, and that is BoxWorks, the document management company, as
Yep.
sometimes they like to say, had their annual event. They had already made an announcement of generative AI. I think they're one of the best companies of visually showing the benefits to customers. So, gosh, what else was there to bring out at BoxWorks, Mel?
Box Hubs was really their big announcement. So the Box Hubs was really kind of using generative AI for content distribution to specific audiences. So if you kind of look at, I think you actually compared it to like a SharePoint,
Yeah.
but easier to use, and really specific to being able to share documents or groups of documents to specific users for their workflows. So and what Box is really good at is security, keeping documents contained within the areas where it needs to be kept and secure within that kind of that fence. Even if it's within a company, only certain employees can have permissions for it. But then within that, they can now, like with Box AI tools, can provide that content summarization and search capabilities. So they're taking that kind of that SharePoint, and don't want to give it like assign a different brand to it, but that sort of style of their hub, but then adding AI to it to really make that content useful. And one of the things that Box has really been working on is figuring out how to make content more useful, because that's really what they have, is a ton of content. That's where people store their content, is within Box. But with generative AI, they can make that content, a lot of it unstructured, more useful. And one thing, I actually tweeted this because I thought it was really like just a really simple thing. But Aaron Levy, who's the CEO of Box, said, "We believe that nowhere is AI more powerful than with enterprise content, i.e. documents. You know what's inside the documents? Lots of words. What's the power of an LLM? Processing and understanding words." It's like, how simple is that, right? But that's exactly what they're doing. They're taking documents, they're putting them in hubs, they're allowing certain people to access these hubs, they're making it really easy for people to create those hubs. I don't like the word curate, but that's the word they're using. Curate these hubs. They're making it really simple to add permissions for people to be able to access them, and even be able to search the content even if you can't access them. So
Mhm.
you're able to kind of access that enterprise information without getting any sort of like personal information. So like HR can be fully locked down. You're not going to get people's salary. You can't search like how much does Sally make or whatever, that kind of thing. But you're able to then use the AI to search and process all of these words, and you get more out of that unstructured data.
Yeah, I think it was a good breakdown. And, I look at hubs and I think of, SharePoint and then what Microsoft has kind of evolved with Teams. And yeah, it really is a hub for any way you want to slice it, right? You want to slice it by um, you want to slice it by topic, you want to slice it by project, you want to slice it by group. Do that and do it very quickly. And it has the same security features as was set up with the document itself. So it makes sense. It's expected. I know the company is making progress on going GA on many of its generative AI feature. They just signed or re-upped or extended their collaboration with the folks over at Google Cloud. So yeah, Aaron Levy and the company are making it happen.
Mhm.
And again, potential to be disrupted by startups, and then potential to be disrupted by the larger companies like Microsoft, even Adobe, and Google. But Aaron and the leadership team just keep it going.
Yeah, and I think just one last thing is they introduced an interesting pricing model for their AI functionality, which is sort of like this credit system, but it allows for kind of a shared pool of credits. So even though each user has a certain amount of credits, when those credits expire, or when those credits are not expire, when those credits are used, they can pull from additional credits that are shared by the organization. So you're always going to have kind of power users within the organization, and then you're going to have users that maybe do one or two queries a month. So it's not like an organization then has to choose, well, is this user using it enough to warrant a license? Like if we're looking at the $30 per user per month type of license. So I think it's a smart way for them to price that, where everybody can have access to it, but the power users can actually not get cut off at a certain number. It also doesn't expose them to this, huge cost if they have a ton of power users, because they're using up their credits, and there's a point at which it says, like, okay, your credits are done, then you have to buy more.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And check out Mel's piece either on our website over on Forbes. Hey, let's move to Avaya Choose Your Journey Strategy. What is this, and where was this event?
So I went to Dubai. This was my first time in Dubai. This was at the GITEX conference. So as you probably know, Avaya just recently exited their bankruptcy, and they have pretty much they have a new CEO who took them kind of through that restructuring, Alan Mazurek. I wrote about them a few months ago. Seems like it was longer than that, but it was just a couple of months ago. And the choose your own or choose your journey strategy is really, when you look at a lot of these kind of cloud-based companies, they are basically saying, like, cloud is the only way. Like for contact centers, what Avaya is doing is they're saying, you don't have to move to the cloud, or two, you can have your phone and all of the things, which I think is, what at least what they think they do best, but then have your digital channels in the cloud. Avaya works with, like, I think maybe 90% of the Fortune 100 companies. But they're doing some really interesting things. So they're not saying, like, okay, everything has to be cloud. It's very much like a choose your journey, like move whatever channels you want to the cloud. But they are doing some really interesting things with generative AI and with digital channels in the cloud. They did introduce some metaverse things that I thought were, like, a little bit like, okay, why are we wasting time on the metaverse? But then they took us over to show, like, some use cases in government, interesting enough, where people are using the metaverse to virtually walk into, like, a kind of like a customer service center and interact with people. So it's certainly in that region, it's being used. But I think one thing that really stood out to me is that when I talked to Alan Mazurek, the CEO, I think it was about 3 months ago, he said that, they got their restructuring done from a financial standpoint, and now it's time to really restructure from an operational standpoint. He hired basically almost an entirely new C-suite. They have really changed kind of their sales motion, their price structuring, pretty much everything. And it looks to me like the company is in really good shape. And I had met with him over video before, but this was the first time that I met with him in person, as well as some of their other top executives. And I think they're in really good shape. It was a really good couple of days meeting with them. I think they've got some really solid innovations, definitely on their AI. Some of the things that I saw for contact center, I think, are things that probably we're going to see from most vendors, but they're ahead on some things, certainly on kind of optimizing for looking out for kind of the agent burnout, which is super important right now, especially as we're going into the holidays. I'm doing some research on that right now, actually. So I think that they're, like I said, other than, I think, the metaverse stuff, for me, that's just for me, maybe because I'm old. I always feel young, but then I'm like, when stuff like that comes up, I'm like, why the metaverse? But it was good. It was good to spend time with them, and it was good to see, even just in a couple of months, the progress that they've made towards the things that Alan said were going to happen in a few months. I think that have happened in those few months. And so if I'm taking another page from your book, if I'm looking at the executive team of a company to kind of judge whether they're primed for success, I got to tell you, they have been up against some tough, not they have tough competition. I mean, it's a competitive market, but they also are up against kind of some tough reputational issues,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is their second bankruptcy, and their competition likes to point that out.
Well, listen, it's there's a lot of companies that we're in transition between, you know, different versions of modern work. And, they're best known for areas that aren't necessarily modern. And
Mhm.
then every company, Microsoft was in this case probably a decade ago. They had a completely failed smartphone business they bought, went out of business. It looked like the web was going to eat, uh, Word and PowerPoint and Excel, and they really weren't that big a part of the cloud, right? And to their credit, they powered out of this thing, leveraging their base of customers. And
Mhm.
Avaya needs to do the same thing, right?
Mhm.
If your holistic solution is a dial tone device and services solely inside of the enterprise, that's not going to cut it.
It's not enough. Yeah.
And their plan is to kind of extend it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Mitel, um, in a way, maybe not 100% the same, but yeah, that's their challenge. And I'd like to say that each bankruptcy makes the company stronger, but at some point, right, if they don't power out of this one, I don't know who would offer them money to get out of this one. So, best of luck, Avaya. Now let's move to Cisco WebexOne. Wow. Gosh, I think I've attended 3 of these before. I saw the news. Break down the show, Mel.
So, as to be expected, there were, a lot of AI assistant capabilities for contact center and Webex Suite. Um, but I think those are, like I said, to be expected. There were a couple of pretty big standout things. I'm not sure if you saw anything about this. They're real-time media models in Webex, which basically enables analysis of the audio and video beyond just the text space. So we didn't see a whole lot of this. There was, this was more of an announcement, and I think they're going to have to be careful with how this is used because I think this could creep people out a little bit, but it can analyze like gestures, tone of voice, inflections, for kind of more enhanced evaluation of communications. But the one thing that was really kind of incredible, and if you were to ask me ever in my life, and I'm pretty nerdy, but if you were to ask me ever in my life if I would be talking to you about audio codecs, I would tell you I wouldn't even have known what that was, but they have a new audio codec which actually uses AI to maintain the audio clarity, like when you have a bad network. So, and they did show this. So when there's a bad network connection, the normally you'll get the glitchy audio. This actually replaces or reconstructs the packets, and it gets, and they say up to even 90% packet loss, and makes the audio completely clear. So in like the demo of it, you kind of see it on the the graph or whatever it is where it like drops. But using AI, it actually puts that audio back together, and it goes from glitchy hearing every seventh word to being completely clear. So that was pretty cool. And it really does line up with what Cisco kind of stands for in terms of like making sure every voice, in terms of modern work, making sure every voice is heard. And they do that with their cameras, they do that with their audio, with their intelligent director. So like when you see a boardroom, it's not just one camera focused on the room. It's like the intelligent director, and other companies have this now too, But I think Cisco was really leading the way in making sure that people are seen and heard, that nobody's kind of left out of a meeting because the camera isn't focused on them. So I think that, sort of goes in with kind of what they're trying to do on that front with modern work. The other thing, which I think is actually pretty significant, and not just because they're really cool, but so I actually have them right here because I'm using them and they're awesome. They introduced these Bang & Olufsen 950 earbuds, kind of a AirPod competitor.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting about this is not just because they work really well, but I think that from a branding perspective, this is really smart for Webex. I heard this, I'm not the only one that thinks this. I heard this from press and analysts and even from Cisco themselves and from Webex, that they have a little bit of a branding issue, that people look at Webex and, it's not Zoom. It's not a verb. It's not something that like everybody kind of looks at like a consumer brand. But when you put it with this luxury consumer brand, and they've done this with, Webex and Mercedes and Webex and Audi, they just haven't really done a great job of communicating that. And Webex is an enterprise communication tool, but that doesn't mean that consumers aren't using it, right? Because just because you work in the enterprise doesn't mean you're not a consumer, right? Like, I mean, look, this is a prime example. I'm using a Yeti that has
Right.
Snapdragon on it, right? Like, it is a consumer
Right.
brand, but it says Snapdragon. And this is just, I just happen to be using this, but it's actually a really good example. Um, so these are really, really nicely designed. I had such a funny use case for these actually at WebexOne. I hooked them up. The sound is like to be expected from Bang & Olufsen, is incredible. I was literally like dancing in my hotel room. But then I did have one of those mornings where I had to listen in on a call and get ready for meetings downstairs. I put them in. I was able to blow dry my hair and hear it call.
My gosh, I love that. I have to tell you, I've yet to encounter anything that's as good as the latest version of the AirPods, and I will be amazed if anything gets close to that. I'm a very hard grader on Apple, but if something like that can do it, I
Yeah.
will try it out and give my assessment. And my answer is yes, it needs to be better than
Mhm.
um, the any things from Apple.
Yeah,
Um,
oh, absolutely.
okay, I think that WebEx is at an interesting time strategically, and they have a lot of competition. I do think, though, we're not even close to nailing this hybrid work thing, and I think they play a major role in that. They play a major role in it already, and I'm interested to see kind of where they take this in the future. So, and if they want to send me a pair of headphones to try out, I'll do that. So, hey, let's move to our final topic here. This is hot or not. No additional cost features. I think I know where you're going with that, but I don't want to prefetch anything here.
So I kind of wanted to call this freemium, but really it's not freemium because this is no additional cost.
Yeah,
These are features that are being offered, and I sort of started to pick up on this trend, and I keep seeing it over and over again. Features that are being offered at no additional cost to subscribers, but when you actually dig in, there's a reason for it. So we actually saw, I think saw it first. I have this sort of out of order, but we saw this first with Zoom Companion AI.
that's right.
That is, they're offering this to subscribers. So they're offering this amazing, everybody says, nobody's going to argue with this, that Zoom summarization features are incredible.
Awesome.
And so that is a no additional cost feature to subscribers. So that's somewhere, where people are like, okay, well, I use the free Zoom. Maybe it's time to upgrade because I'm going to get
Yeah.
that feature. So Webex is now doing something similar with their contact center, their basic contact center, where, if you have sort of you subscribe to the Webex suite, but you need just a temporary solution for a contact center. Say there's just, something going on where you just have like a sudden surge. Um, well, then you get to try that out, and maybe that will prompt somebody to subscribe. We saw this also with at Microsoft with Windows AI features in Windows 11, or sorry, AI features in Microsoft Windows 11. Is that going to say that those are free with Windows 11? So is that going to prompt people who haven't yet upgraded to 11 to be like, oh, maybe it's time? And then I just recently saw that Canva is now offering free subscriptions to classrooms for educators. So my guess is, and I really didn't do a whole lot of digging into this, but my guess is, once you use that, you're probably going to want like a more premium version, kind of similar to, what Grammarly does. So, but with Grammarly, that's not a, free to, that's not a no additional cost feature. That is actually a free feature. But so I think this is an interesting kind of marketing. It's something, I don't know. Have you seen this before?
Oh, listen, if I look at the way that they're pricing this stuff leads back to what their strategy is, right? And that can be anywhere from a protect and defend to let's go on offense and try to steal some market share and then everything in between. And I think you did an eloquent job going through what could be some of the motivations for these folks. And I did a head scratcher on Zoom Companion AI when I first looked at it. Was basically, hey, it comes free, because it was so good, right?
Mhm.
And I know that it's costing them a lot of money to do
Yeah.
this. Now, once you get used to something, there's a potential that they knew what they had and they knew it was awesome. And then they just decided, hey, we're going to get people addicted on this. And then we're going to move from there. And oh, by the way, we've seen companies raise prices. I mean, look at online video services, streaming services, right?
Right.
And so no customer should be under the illusion that some of these companies that say, "Hey, it's free," they want to start charging later. They might not, but they might. So, and
Yeah.
then I think you have Office or Microsoft 365 that goes GA this month. That um, they the amount of data that they need to go in and ground against basically your entire every spreadsheet, every PowerPoint, every Word document, every chat, that is monumentally more expensive, I think. Oh, by the way, in every Teams call
Mhm.
than what Zoom is providing right now. So sometimes it's cost based as well. Sometimes it's benefit based, which I also think, Microsoft believes that, there's going to be this amazing experience and capabilities. And yeah, for $30 a month, if I can be 30% more productive, I think it's absolutely a win for the enterprise to be able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, hot or not, it's hard for me to say. It's one of these things that I'm not a definitive on it. It's kind of it depends.
Mhm. I'm gonna say it's definitely hot in terms of it's a trend, and we'll see. I think you're right. It's like hot or not. Is it gonna work?
Yeah,
Can they maintain it? Because as you said, these models are really expensive to run. So can that be maintained as free features?
exactly. Microsoft has somewhat of a built-in advantage here in that they host their own platform. They have their own AI.
Mhm.
So they have to have an advantage, and so does Oracle NetSuite, right? Because they're sitting on OCI, others, right? Like Zoom, Box, and I think for even that matter, Adobe. sit on top of an IaaS service like an AWS or an Azure or an OCI or Google Cloud. So that built-in cost advantage, I think helps. You can imagine if they get a huge uptake, Microsoft does of M365, an additional $30 a month per user, per seat,
Right.
right? And you can imagine the profits that could drive. It's pretty astronomical. So, uh, good show so far. Well, not so far. We're over with this
We're
show. We're
done.
done with
We're
this
almost
show.
done.
What do you have coming up here? Travel? What are you looking at? Any big events in the
Um,
near future for you?
don't have any big travel coming up. We have Ring Central is having their virtual analyst event and then an in-person analyst event. I think it's in January. Have a Zoho event coming at the beginning of the year. I think most of the things are now kind of moving into the beginning of the year. But as I said, I am doing some research now on preparing contact centers for holiday, for the big surge in holiday traffic, um, and catching up. I mean, all that travel is you get so much done on the road, but at the same time, there's like a lot to catch up on from coming back from a trip like that. So there's a lot of things I still have to kind of summarize and write up and get done from returning from that. How about you? You going anywhere? Are you? I know you
Course.
just got back from like 5 cities in 5 days, also.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It was good to relax this Sunday, but yeah, I'm headed to an IBM research event coming up. I was supposed to be at VMware Explore. I decided not to go in the end, and then I'm going to go to International Supercomputer in Denver. Then watch some virtual Microsoft Ignite the week after. They did not have an on-site analyst event, so I'll be catching all that awesome stuff from afar, and then we're going into Thanksgiving, which I'm super duper excited about. So I hope to see all of the family coming in, and then we roll into reInvent in Las Vegas. So yeah, and then the week after that, we have Lattice, Marvell, Intel out on the West Coast. So fun stuff ahead. I am really looking forward to the Christmas break.
Yeah, it never ends.
But good stuff. I like to be busy. I'd be bored if I weren't. But hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you have any comments, you know where to find Mel and I on social media. We appreciate it. And take care.